with, I had a completely different measure prepared, but when the young brother came in, he just inspired something in me, and I'll preface my measure with a reading from the Piscean text, also known as the Holy Bible. And I'm going to read from, the first verse I'm going to read from is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19. And this is Moses speaking to the children of Israel. And he says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live, that thou mayest love the Lord thy God, and that thou mayest obey his voice, and that thou mayest cleave unto him. For he is thy life, and the length of thy days, that thou may dwell in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. So with that, the main point that I want to make is that in anything, Allah, or the Most High, whatever we choose to call him, places before us life and death. So before we began our meeting, we were speaking about sovereign ideals, and basically being what the Moorish movement really represented, or what the Moorish Science Temple of America represented. And I'll use the words of our prophet, and I'll read from the Moorish literature as well. And I'm going to read from an article entitled Moorish Leaders' Historical Message to America. And it reads, in connections with the aims, objects, rules, and regulations of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Now the first sentence is laying out law. I'll read it again. It says, in connection with the aims, so our goals, our clear conceptions, our objects, rules, and regulations of the Moorish Science Temple of America, because we're not a lawless people, I deem it proper to submit to you a brief statement of our organization, covering its inception, rise, and progress, and of the Mohammedan religion, which I hope will be satisfactory to you and be the means of causing you at all times to adhere to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice in your relations with mankind in general. I further most anxiously hope this brief statement will help you more clearly see the duty and wisdom of at all times upholding those fundamental principles which are desired for our civilization, for the civilization of our posterity, or our future generations, such as obedience to law, respect, loyalty to government, tolerance, and unity. We, organized as the Moorish Science Temple of America, Moorish Science Temple, in the year of 1925, and were legally incorporated as a civic organization under the laws of the state of Illinois, November 29th, 1926. So when you asked about the commercial side of our movement, as we said, we're a divine and a national side. Originally, it was a civic organization, so we were involved in society, in the civilization, which is where the word civic comes from. So that was our primary purpose. The name Moorish Temple of Science changed to the Moorish Science Temple of America May 1928, in accordance with the legal requirements of the Secretary of the State of Illinois. The object of our organization is to help in the great program of uplifting fallen humanity and teaching those things necessary to make our members better citizens. So you have organizations like the Jewish people. Where do they go to learn about themselves and to learn how to project themselves in the broader society? They go to synagogues, right? So other nationalities, other nations have these organizations that they go to groom them, to groom their character, so that before we go and speak before the politicians, we don't make a fool of ourselves. We know how to speak, we know how to carry ourselves, we know how to hold an intelligent conversation and how to present ourselves without being radical and agitating, which are words from our prophet as well. A national this is still speaking about the Moorish Temple of America. A national organization with a Rotarian complexion. Rotarian complexion means that we should be like doing business with each other. If this sister here, what do you do, sister?
I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher. So if I want my children taught by someone that looks like me, someone who I know is not going to teach my child European psychology, I'm going to take them to this sister here and establish a Rotarian complexion. If I also do childcare and things like that, so if she wants, childcare for her young children, she may bring her child to me. Brother, what do you do?
I like landscaping.
You like landscaping? So good. So I'm going to do business with you. You're going to bring your little sisters. Do you have children? When you have children, you bring them to me or you bring them to this sister. And that's establishing a Rotarian complexion. That's nationality. That's where our salvation lies.
Bartering.
Exactly. Or, we can use the currency. We can use it. It won't hurt us. It doesn't kill us. It's just the means. We agree that this is worth this much, and that's what puts into that. So a national organization with a Rotarian complexion as it relates to branch temples becomes obvious with the increasing number of inquiries from men and women in different sections of the country concerning the purpose of the organization. There are branch temples in 15 different states at this time. He put it in there. So at this time, and this was during the prophet's day and age. Since the work of the Moorish Temple of America was largely religious, the organization has been legally changed to a religious corporation, and an affidavit to this effect has been properly filed in the Cook County Recorder's Office in Illinois. So originally it was founded as a civic organization, speaking to that, that commercial side that you were concerned about, and then it was changed to a religious organization. And why the prophet did that, that's for us to study and to find out. Inspired by the lofty teachings of the Quran, we have it as the revealed word of God Allah. We shall foster the principles of its teaching among our members. This is our religious privilege as American citizens, under the laws of one of the greatest documents of all time, the American Constitution. So our prophet called the American Constitution one of the greatest documents of all time. The Mohammedan religion is the least appreciated and probably the most misunderstood of the world's great religions. This is especially true in our Western world. Try to understand what Mohammedanism stands for and some of the things it has contributed to the world. So in the Moorish Temple of America, our religion is Islamism. And our prophet asks us in our 101s, what is your religion? And the response is Islamism. So that Islamism is not that Arab custom that you see out, there are certain things that they hold to be sunnah or tradition, their tradition, that's not necessarily our custom. You won't see our brothers, walking around with pants above their ankles. That's a tradition of Arabs, the pale Arabs. That's not our tradition. Our tradition as Moorish Americans, you see, when we greet, we say Islam.
That's right.
If you don't do that, it doesn't not make you a Muslim, but that is our custom. So with this, we have to understand what Islam really is. Islam simply means peace.
That's right.
And there's an article in here as well that speaks to what Islamism is. Muhammad was the founder of the Mohammedan religion. It originated 13 centuries ago on the Arabian Peninsula, where the streams of commerce and culture, which you said you're most interested in, commerce and culture, meet and mingled in the Middle Ages, where the markets of exchange were stationed for treasures of India and the products of the Mediterranean coast. There, this religion was established in the unprecedented short period of 20 years, and unlike many other religions, without the aid of any royal patronage and support. Buddhism had its Osaka, Judaism, Ahsoka, pardon, Judaism it's Joshua, Christianity it's Constantine, but Mohammedanism had no person of royal rank and power to assist in its establishment and spread. And it goes on to speak more about Islam. And I'm going to skip down a couple of paragraphs so not to burden you all. And I'm going to go down to more so on the commercial side, because that's what we discussed as well. It says, or excuse me, I'm going to go. Islam. It says, in connection with our religious aims and beliefs, we must promote economic security. The preaching of economic security among us is by no means as widespread and intensive as the circumstances demand. No other one thing is more needed among us at this time than greater economic power, better positions for our men and women, more business employment for our boys and girls, and bigger incomes will follow our economic security. We shall be secure in nothing until we have economic power. A beggar people cannot develop the highest in them, nor can they attain the genuine enjoyment of the spiritualities of life. Our men, women, and children should be taught to believe in the capacity of our group to succeed in business. So that's a significant part that we kind of breeze over. Our men, women, and children should be taught to believe in the capacity of our group to succeed in business. Now, sister, you said you work with children, and I'm sure you have children at times that don't even believe in themselves. They don't believe that they can do a particular thing. They see something and they get overwhelmed. So that belief, that's the first step to bringing things into fruition. So if I think that as an Asiatic or a so-called black person, if I try to start up a business, I'm going to fail, why would I even start?
That's right.
So this institution is there to give those children in your family, those children that inspiration that they need in order to at least start, at least try to see what they can accomplish. That's what this movement is for. In spite of the trials and failures of some of them, our men, women, and children should be taught to believe in the capacity of our group to succeed in business, in spite of the trials and failures of some of them. Trials and failures in business are by no means confined to any particular group of people. So, in that case, Chinese people fail, Mexican people fail, Italian people fail. We all fail. But the fact is, we have to strengthen that belief so that we can bring these things into fruition. Some business ventures of all people fail. We have many men and women among our people who are qualified both by training and experience, who are shining lights in the business world of all the people. It is a sad weakness in us as a people that we have withheld the very encouragement, support, and patronage that would have made some of our business ventures a grand success. So have you heard the person that says, well, I don't do business with black people. I don't do business with my people. They don't do right. Have we heard that?
Yes, ma'am.
We heard that, right? So that has to stop.
Right.
It has to stop. Because there are some of us that do good business, that do good works. So we have to support that. And if you don't, you're considered a traitor. And worst of all, continuing the sentence, and worst of all have joined in the condemnations of them when they failed, except in cases of actual dishonesty, discourtesy, lack of service, and actual unreliability. Our business enterprises in every field of endeavor should have lulled the confidence, cooperation, and patronage whenever and wherever they can be given. Read carefully the doctrines of the Moorish Science Temple of America. That's an important sentence as well that we've also been. To read carefully Islam. That's an important sentence as well. To read carefully the doctrines of the Moorish Science Temple of America. we get introduced to the prophet via all of these people who have their conceptions. If I were to come up here and tell you what Sister LamadahYah Bey thinks and give you all of this lofty wisdom from somewhere else, and I didn't go to my prophet and square it with my prophet, you should look at me some type of way. If somebody else tells you that they're a Moor, or they follow the prophet, but they don't give you words of the prophet, you should look at them some type of way. We have to read from our prophet, and everything, like the sister said, she studies astronomy and astrology and all, numerology and etymology, and all of these things can be squared with our prophet. We're not saying don't go outside and study other teachings, but we're saying that this foundation came to us, the Moorish Americans here in America. Our prophet came to redeem us from our sinful ways, so we have to square things with our prophet. So in order to do that, we have to read carefully the doctrines of the Moorish Science Temple of America. It contains our hopes, aims, rules, and articles of religion. Every member should have a copy. In conclusion, I urge you to remember there is work enough for all to do in helping to build a better world. The problems of life are largely social and economic. So speaking to that economic piece, the commercial piece, in a profound sense, they are moral and spiritual. So as we mentioned before, if we don't have that moral and spiritual piece down, I can't do business with you. And you shouldn't want to do business with me because you don't know what standard I'm bound to. You don't know if you give me money, if I'm going to run off tomorrow because I have no principles. So this institution is to instill certain principles, the principles of Islamism, or peace with ourselves and peace with everything around us, so that I wouldn't run off with your money. You know what I'm bound to. And if I do something, you know who to come to. There's a chain of command as well. There's a system. We're a drill society. We have laws, we make laws, and we enforce laws, as the brother read in the Divine Constitution and Bylaws. The problems of life are largely social and economic. In a profound sense, they are moral and spiritual. Have lofty conceptions of your duties to your country and fellow men in general, and especially those with whom you deal. This includes such honesty and righteousness as will cause you to put yourself in the other fellow's place. Look for the best in others and give them the best that is in you. Have a deeper appreciation for womanhood. Brighten the hopes of our youth in order that their courage be increased to dare to do wondrous things, as we mentioned before. We have to instill that in them at a young age because there's so much that they're facing from the time they come out of the womb. It's so much that they're facing. So we have to instill that fortitude in them. Adhere at all times to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Speaking from the prophet, I am your affectionate leader. I shall continue to labor day and night, both in public and private, for your good, thereby contributing to the welfare of our country and its people as a whole. Noble Drew Ali, The Moorish Guide, and this was written October 26, 1928. Now with this is a clear understanding of what our movement is here to do. What's not mentioned in there is writing off debts, or authenticating our birth certificates. That's not mentioned in this. That's not what this movement is for. That's not what this movement was founded for. You won't find it in any of the literature, in the Moorish literature, the Holy Quran, or the 101s. So we have to remember that we are living within a society. And as I was speaking to the brother before, it's as if I come into your house, I have to live according to the rules of your house. If you say there are no shoes on your table, I can't put my shoes on your table. And if I do put my shoes on your table, you then have the right to do whatever, like the brother said, to bestow whatever harm you choose to upon me, because I'm not following the rules and regulations of your household. And we have to think of if we were in power. We have to remember if we were in power, because we think as subjects. We tend to think as subjects. We tend to think as lower, like the lower class of citizens. we have to begin to think of the higher, like as the higher class of citizens. So if we were the lawmakers and we said that after a certain time we didn't want people driving down Cleveland Avenue, and people said, well, I'm a free person, I'm outside of the government, I'm going to drive down Cleveland Avenue whenever I feel like it. How would we enforce law? Would we allow them to do, for whatever reason we put that ordinance in place, would we allow them to continue to drive down Cleveland Avenue, or would we enforce law? So we have to understand that the government is set in place for a reason. And with that, I'm going to read one more chapter from the Piscean text, and I'll be quick and I'll yield the floor to our Grand Governor. And I was telling the brother that before we opened the meeting that path, I had gone down that path. And it's funny because I used to read this chapter coming from the school of thought that I came from. I used to read this chapter, and I don't know why I didn't see the clarity of what it says, but now that I read it in retrospect, I understand what it's saying. And it's Romans chapter 13, and it says, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. So those people that are set in place, whether we like them or not, they are set in place by the Most High. So if, Allah forbid, I love all of my sheiks, but if there was a sheik that I didn't necessarily care for, there's a process that if I need to bring someone up on charges, if I feel offended by something that somebody did to me, it's one thing to just go and be disrespectful and just, to call them out in front of everyone. But there's an order. There's an order of things that has to happen within the Moorish Temple of America. I have to write a grievance. I have to, petition someone, to bring up the charges. There's a set order of doing things. That's what we learn here in the Moorish Temple of America, is if we're not satisfied with what's going on out there, then we have to do something to change it. But there's an order to change it, and we have to follow that order, because these powers are set in place by the Most High. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but I'll say of Allah. The powers that be are ordained of Allah. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of Allah. And they that resisteth shall receive to themselves damnation. So I was telling the brother, I went down that path. I can show you my mug shots, plural. I can show you my mug shots, plural, from going down that path and listening to somebody who had given me something but had never gone through it. See, our prophet, he was a prophet, and he left his footprints clearly cut.
That's right.
Everything that he tells us to do, he went through it.
That's right.
So we have to listen to those prophets that leave their footprints clearly cut. I went down a path that was given to me from somebody who hadn't gone down that path. They were guessing. And so I ended up in the situation that I ended up in with no aid. I received that damnation from Allah for opposing the government that was set up over me by his ordinance, by Allah's ordinance. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. I'll read that again. For rulers are not a terror to good works. If we're out in the community doing what our prophet brought us, uplifting fallen humanity, if we're feeding the hungry, if we are caring for those in need, if we're teaching the children, nobody's going to come and shut us down. Nobody's going to come and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Nobody's going to come and arrest us for doing good works. I'll read it again. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God, of Allah, to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain. So this government that's established, one, we have to stop thinking that it's a European government. It's whoever's government chooses to take it. So if we choose to go and be active in government, then it's ours.
That's right.
If the European chooses to be the most active in government, then it is a European government. So until we become active in government, it's going to remain the way it is. So with this, that power is not given in vain. It's given to enact justice to those who deserve it. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for the wrath, but also for the conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore unto all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, to Allah belongs all of our fear, honor to whom honor, owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in the same, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So that goes into, all of the commandments as well. But we do understand, it's saying that we are to obey law. And we do understand that at times, there are people who abuse their power. And in that, like I said, there's still an order about getting justice. There's still an order about getting justice. And I will read from one more chapter, the chapter of justice in our Circle 7. And if you want to read along, it's chapter 31. Islam? The peace of society dependeth on justice, the happiness of individuals on the safe enjoyments of all their possessions. Keep the desires of thy heart, therefore, within the bounds of moderation. Let the hand of justice lead them aright. Cast not an evil eye on the goods of thy neighbor. Let whatever is his property be sacred from thy touch. So that goes into those commandments that we just read. Cast not an evil eye on the goods of thy neighbor. Let whatever is his property be sacred from thy touch. Let no temptation allure thee, nor any provocation excite thee to lift up thy hand to hazard of his life. Defame him not in his character. Bear no false witness against him. Corrupt not his servant to cheat or forsake him. And the wife of his bosom will tempt not to sin. It will be a grief to his heart, which thou canst not relieve, an injury to his life, which no reparation can atone. So, and this is disuniting for us to betray each other and to trade on each other. So if we're going into business with each other and we had a negative dealing before, it makes it difficult for us to go forward in business with each other. It makes it difficult for us to go forward in anything with each other if we violate each other, because we see that and we expect for it to happen again. So we have to keep our dealings with each other pure. In thy dealings with men be impartial and just, and do unto them as thou wouldest they should do unto thee. Be faithful to thy trust, and deceive not the man who relieth upon thee. Be assured it is less evil in the sight of Allah to steal than to betray. Oppress not the poor, and defraud not of his hire the laboring man. When thou sellest for gain, hear the whispering of conscience, and be satisfied with moderation, nor from the ignorance of thy buyer take any advantage. Pay the debts which thou owest, for he who gave thee credit relieth upon thine honor to withhold from him his due is both mean and unjust. Finally, O son of society, examine thy heart, call remembrance to thy aid, and if any of these things thou have transgressed, make a speedy reparation to the utmost of thy power. And I'll read that. I know I keep saying I'm going to come down, but I'm going to read one more thing.
You work.
I'm going to read one more thing. I'm going to read from the section that starts, and these soul attributes became a body beautiful. So in the beginning we fell, and if you get a chance to read through this entire chapter, you'll see how we fell from the plane of spirit to the plane of soul to the plane of the manifest, where we are now. And this is speaking from us going from the plane of soul to the plane of manifest. And these soul attributes became a body beautiful. A multitude of lessons man must learn upon the plane of soul. And here he tarries many ages until his lessons are all learned. Upon the boundary of the plane of soul, the ether began to vibrate slower still, and then the essence took on a final garb, or our physical state. The perfumes and the odors and the true sensations and all of love were clothed in flesh, and man was clothed in flesh. Perfected man must pass through all the ways of life, and so a carnal nature was full manifest, a nature that sprang forth from fleshly things. Without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength, and thought must be developed by exercise of strength. And so this carnal nature soon became a foe that man must fight, that he might be the strength of Allah made manifest. Let every living thing stand still and hear. Man is the Lord of all the plane of manifest, of protoplasm, of mineral, of plant, of beast, but he gave up his birthrights just to gratify his lower self. So we're giving up the opportunity to be active in government and to be active in developing this Moorish divine and national movement to satisfy our lower selves, to basically, as the scriptures say, to take the crumbs that fall from the master's table. So instead of reclaiming our vast estate in the way that we're supposed to do it, morally and spiritually, and then, and then the commercial side, as you said, the economic side, and then reclaiming that, getting a hold on that, we're sacrificing that for crumbs. But man will regain his lost estate. Man is the Lord of all the plane of manifest, of protoplasm, of mineral, of plant, of beast, but he gave up his birthright just to gratify his lower self. But man will regain his lost estate, his heritage, but he must do it in a conflict that cannot be told in words. It's not going to come from typing a document. It's not going to come that way. It's going to come by us strengthening ourselves and being proven worthy to Allah that we're ready to handle that type of responsibility, that we're ready to be a free people, that we're ready to regain our lost estate. Because our birthrights, being Lord over the plane of manifest, that's not a small task. That's a big task. Could we even lord over the people in this room? Could we govern the people in this room? If there was a conflict between myself and the sister, how would we sit down and figure that out to where me and my sister could be back on good terms? So we have to be ready for power. It's not just given. It's not, it's not just given. We have to earn it. But man will regain his lost estate, his heritage, but he must do it in a conflict that cannot be told in words. Yea, he must suffer trials and temptations manifold, but let him know that cherubim and seraphim that rule the stations of the sun and the spirit of the mighty Allah who rule the solar stars are his protectors and his guide, and they will lead to victory. Man will be fully saved, redeemed, perfected by the things he suffers on the plane of flesh and on the plane of soul. When man has conquered carnal things, his garb of flesh will then have served its purpose well, and it will fall and will be no more. Then he will stand untrammeled on the plane of soul, where he must full complete his victories. Unnumbered foes will stand before man upon the plane of soul. These he must overcome, yea, overcome them every one. Thus hope will ever be his beacon light, and there is no failure for the human soul, for Allah is leading on, and victory is sure. So in order to regain our lost estate, it's a struggle. And our lost estate is not, in that sense, we can look at the what you call fiat currency as something minute. In that sense, we can. Because our vast estate compared to any debt that you could write off it just doesn't compare. So our first vast estate that we have to regain is our spiritual estate. So we have to be a spiritual people. We have to be governed by that highest attribute of ourselves. And then we can reclaim everything that belongs to us. And with that, well, do we have any questions brought by you for Islam? And with that, I'll leave you as I came. And